Hello, I'm Melanie Ochoa. I'm the Director of Police Practices at the ACLU of Southern California, and I want to thank you for inviting me to be part of your year-end celebration. And I want to start out by saying how impressed I was with everyone's performance this evening, and to say how apparent it is the amount of work and effort that has gone into everyone's performance in preparing for this debate and executing your performances. So I want to give you a round of applause for that effort and that work that is clear from what I've seen today. I want to say first off also that I'm heartened by the topic of this debate, which is central to the work that I do, the question of reform versus transformative change around the question of policing is something that has been at the forefront of political and public discourse over this past year, and is a question that touches on all of the very important issues and concerns and considerations that were raised in both the affirmative and opposition debates this evening. It's absolutely a question of how do we want to address public safety? Do we focus on what would be considered incremental reforms, which may be more palatable to members of the public, maybe more likely to get passed, which may be something on the books rather than the lofty goals that may never be enacted but are transformative change? Or do we want to focus our efforts on that transformative change because that's the only way that we can actually attain public safety? I think that's the question of the moment, and I'm glad that you were able to really identify the underlying thoughts and concerns and facts that we need to be thinking about in order to try to decide between those two approaches. Even the explicit versus implicit bias question that you were discussing is, and that's been central to the work that I've been working on at the ACLU since I started, where implicit bias was the language that we used to try to get policing agencies to address the vast disparities that we see in policing on the ground, because that was the language that policing agencies were willing to hear. That was the language that they were willing to accept because it took responsibility away from officers. It wasn't saying that officers were racist or that officers were intentionally doing anything wrong. It was officers were just subject to the same kinds of thinking processes that the entire human race is subject to in terms of biases. And so they were more willing to engage in conversations around that, engage in policies around that. But then the question remains, are we actually moving towards a different change? A real difference in policing and substantive change. And I want to laud the teams on the research that you were able to identify on these questions, because you cited some of the things that we sought ourselves in our advocacy around policing. The study about the infiltration of white supremacists into policing agencies and the apparent endorsement of different forms of bias by members of law enforcement agencies as demonstrated in social media posts and other spaces as evidence of explicit bias that needs to be addressed. Is something that we routinely cite to and have really tried to incorporate into our work. And so that is a great find, and I think something that does need to be incorporated into the way that we think about how we're going to approach policing and the issues in policing that we are seeing today, and how we want to take that forward into positive change. And in the few moments that I have left, I wanted to show my appreciation for some of the other tactics that you also used or that I saw you use in your debate that are also crucial to the advocacy work that we are doing. One of which is defining the terms at the outset. And I think when you're talking about transformative change to public safety, and putting and trying to get people to envision a world that they have never seen, it's crucial to be defining the terms, defining the ideas, defining the concepts, and not letting your opposition define those for you, or even well-meaning media who just don't have the depth of knowledge around these issues, but they want to invoke that discussion. And so yes, absolutely define the terms of the debate, define the terms of the world that you want to see, so that you are able to push towards that. Another important tactic that I saw was establishing meaningful measures of success and defining those terms. And I think that's something that we are absolutely trying to do with the work that we're engaged in right now, and pushing the the envelope in terms of what we think of as public safety. I think the main measure of public safety that we see most often is simply crime rates. And I think that is there are tremendous issues with measuring crime and the way that we measure crime and who measures crime and how, what are we actually measuring when we report crime rates. But separate and apart from that, I think the way that we conceive of public safety needs to be pushed beyond just that. Policing itself causes impacts on public safety. Being stopped by a police officer is not a costless experience by those who are stopped. It can cause psychic harm, emotional harm. It may interrupt their ability to get to work, to get to school, to even make a job interview or to pick up their kids. It causes ripple effects in people's lives just from a mere stop, not even an arrest. And when you actually bring in an arrest for things even that are minor, that might never actually result in a conviction on any charge, there are even more impacts on interrupting people's ability to work. We see impacts on homelessness as a result, a loss of jobs, loss of homes, loss of sometimes custody of children because of sustained detention, even without a trial or conviction. Interrupted ability to access a lot of public services as a result of arrests, or even employability, and long-term effects on income outcomes on individuals who are arrested. And so how we think of public safety needs to expand to include not just how many people are arrested, how many crimes the police are reporting having occurred, but how are people actually feeling more safe? How are their needs being met? How is the process of policing interrupting the ability to meet those needs and ensure safety on their own? And so it's crucial to be able to define it, along with defining the terms, defining what a success looks like. What is a community that is more safe going to look like? How are we going to know when we're moving towards that goal? And so just wanted to kind of appreciate that you're using tactics that I think those of us who are advocates in this space are regularly using to try to move towards the goals that we would like to see in the world. And from what I have seen, all of you have great futures in advocacy, whether you want to be attorneys, organizers, or just use that skill in your day-to-day life to advocate for you and the ones that you love, to make sure that they're being taken care of. I would love to see what you guys do in the future. I know that you can do great things, and I wish you all the best. I know this is just the beginning of a great and wonderful future. So have a great evening and good luck on your next step. Bye-bye.